acceptance on actual capital projects, let me ask you to, I don't think it would be necessarily just all the others on the capital list. If you don't mind, please, if you'll.
I'd be happy to answer questions.
No, if you'll stay, well, you could, on the graduate medical education, on the slots, to Chairman Smith's questions with respect to the balance on the recommendations for those, if you don't mind. Can you
Absolutely.
talk about that?
So let me speak briefly about the graduate medical education proposal. This is an initiative that we began studying some time ago through a committee in the University System of Georgia. We proposed a plan because essentially what we are having in Georgia is that we train a large number of medical students. The medical students, as you know, cannot really practice medicine until they complete their graduate medical education, meaning a residency. Residencies are actually managed by hospitals. They are not managed by universities unless the universities own hospitals. So, again, it is a hospital initiative that drives this. We made a proposal to the governor to begin to provide seed monies to allow these hospitals to develop these graduate medical education programs in a matching fashion. So this program doesn't really pay for all of the costs, it just pays for that initiation of that. We have a committee that includes actually the executive director of the Georgia Board for Physician Workforce. But I should note a few things about regarding your question. One, the committee, the University System of Georgia, actually will not benefit from those monies. Remember that the medical school and, of course, the academic health center of the University System of Georgia is the Georgia Health Sciences University. We already have a hospital. We already are maximized at the number of residency programs. These monies are intended to bring new hospitals online that have not had a residency program before, because those are the only hospitals that actually will be able to draw down federal dollars in subsequent years. So these monies are not going to be coming to the University System of Georgia or to Georgia Health Sciences University. They will be going to hospitals that have not had programs before. We estimate that there are between 20 and 25 hospitals throughout the state that currently do not have residency programs that would qualify for having a residency program. The qualification isn't actually driven by us, although we have the expertise to determine that. We obviously manage graduate medical education programs. That qualification actually is managed by the ACGME, the accrediting body for graduate medical education, and there are certain requirements on the size of the hospital and so on. So I don't know if I was able to answer those questions. Happy to answer some further.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Susan. I hope you understand. I just
no, absolutely. Absolutely.
On the other,
absolutely,
Chairman Smith.
The reason I bring this up is because we do lose a lot of doctors once they complete their medical training in Georgia. We lose, 30 to 40%, maybe 50% go somewhere else, leave the state of Georgia. And you say this money will go toward those hospitals that currently do not have a residency program. What about the possibility of not only that, but expanding those hospitals that do have a residency program?
That is actually a very good question, and certainly as a hospital, Georgia Health Sciences University, for example, trains 25% of all residents in the state of Georgia. We would like to find that mechanism. However, the 1996 Budget Appropriations Act of the U.S. Congress has capped the number of positions that a hospital can have, and in fact, once you have had 3 years of residency training as a hospital, you are then capped by the federal government to payment for those number of positions. So in today's environment, federal environment, adding new positions to existing hospitals would mean really that those hospitals or the state would have to carry the full burden of those expenses. So today, this program really will allow us to hopefully bring an additional 400 residency slots online over the next 5 years, and those would then, of course, subsequently allow us to draw down the matching federal dollars from CMS.
The reason I asked this question, there was an announcement this past Friday in Columbus. Mercer Medical is starting start sending their 3rd and 4th year med school students to either St. Francis or the Medical Center in Columbus, with the anticipation within the next 2 to 3 years that we'll have a full-fledged medical school there. And we just want to be sure that there are enough residency positions to go around, especially for some of these other colleges, like I said, Emory and Morehouse and Mercer.
So I need to clarify again. The monies would be going to hospitals, not to universities per se. They would not certainly be going to GHSU at all because of the situation we said. So they would be going to any hospital that qualifies, that is associated. Many of them are, of course, in some partnership with a medical school, whether it's Mercer or Emory or GHSU or any other. But again, it would be hospitals, and these hospitals are generally independent.
Why is it, we've had residency programs for a long time, why is it we have 25 or 30 hospitals in the state of Georgia that currently do not have a residency program?
Well, that is a very good question. I mean, the state of Georgia is 40th in the nation in the number of residency slots per capita, if you would, and that is extraordinarily low. Only about 11 hospitals in Georgia actually do any significant amount of training. Between Grady Memorial, Georgia Health Sciences University, and a couple of other hospitals, we account for about 60% of all the residency slots. That is something we are actually studying at the moment. This is part of our expertise that we bring to the table. There are a number of incentives for hospitals to begin residency training, but the uncertainty of the current healthcare market has actually created an environment where hospitals are unwilling to take on the additional burden of having to recruit or train these individuals. That's why we think that some of these seed monies may be sufficient to get them over this period of uncertainty.
Okay, let's see, another question. Representative Murray. Yep. You bet. Oh, I'm sorry, my fault. All right, any further questions of Dr. Aziz? No. Mr. Chairman Chokas.
Thank you, Dr. Aziz, for your presentation. We had once talked earlier about any way of instituting an undergraduate program in medicine, and of course with the new merger with Augusta State. What are your thoughts about having undergraduate program and in the capacity? I'm familiar with one at the University of Florida, and what they have done is they have bunched together nursing, doctors, pharmacy, optometry, and have them in a focused group, somewhat segregated from the rest of and taking similar courses. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that there are pluses and minuses, and I'd have to give you a more educated answer, but I can tell you on the surface, we do know that a number of universities create what we call pipeline programs. In other words, they bring the health professions together to begin the interprofessional training early, and those individuals would then have a greater degree of experience to get into the health professions. Sometimes those programs result in, say, 6-year medical school training programs where actually they combine both undergraduate and medical school. While theoretically that works very well, I will tell you that that does at times challenge the global training of an individual. In other words, when individuals go to universities, they actually want to be more than just technicians. They need to be globally trained, and in fact there has been nationally a sense that perhaps that's not the way to go if we want to create more thoughtful individuals in society. And so in fact we tend to encourage more liberal arts and other humanities, etc., among these individuals who eventually will go into health professions. And also the short 6-year training for medical students has not really resulted in the kind of success that we'd like to see. So I can only say that that is something that's worthwhile studying, but it's probably today not quite the national trend. Thank you.
Back to Representative Smyre, he has a question.
Who would make the determination on the residency? Following up on Representative Smith's question as it relates having been involved with several medical schools in Georgia, and I agree with you that our residency slots need to be more concentrated and not just limited to those schools, those hospitals that we've had over the years. But who makes that determination on the budget matter that relates itself to the residency? Who makes that determination?
So the process as envisioned is a competitive process by hospitals who would then be applying for these monies. That competitiveness would be based on the accrediting agency's criteria. Again, there are hospitals which will be better suited for the training of individuals, and also will depend on the greater impact. Some hospitals may choose to only submit a proposal for one residency training program. Of course, those would be less competitive than hospitals who would apply for 3 or 4, because that would raise the cap much greater and the impact would be greater. In addition, it would also consider the matching funds that those hospitals are willing to make the commitment long term, because as I said before, this is a short time, 5-year program to increase the residency slots by about 400. We actually need about 1,500 to meet the U.S. average, so we're still going to have to be working on that. So these considerations will all done by basically a committee, but the committee will be using objective data that is actually coming from the accrediting agency. It's not actually being generated by us.
So the hospital would have to have a commitment, and when they make application to residency for the residency slots, it's sort of a two-way street. They would have to have some criteria and something in place in order to be the recipient of a residency.
Right.
slot.
These are matching funds. These monies, as you can imagine, are not intended to pay for the full cost of that development.
Okay.
Again, these are seed monies that we are hoping will help these hospitals, because it's the first 3 to 4 years of the costs of the development of a program that is the most costly to the hospital, because that's before they're actually receiving federal monies, and yet those are the times when they have to hire faculty and begin to pay residents and so on and so forth. That's really where the obstacle bottleneck is. Correct.
I see no further questions. Thank you, Dr. Aziz.
Thank you very much.
Good job. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we are out of time for the Regents. Chancellor Huckabee, or is there anything you want to do to finish up with, Mr. Brown? Any comments on that printer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are some, the other capital outlay projects, they will distribute to you some one-pagers. So if you get a chance to look at them.
To each member of the committee, we'll make sure that we get that. Well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure, Chancellor. Mr. Brown. Next is the Technical College System of Georgia. I know there's always an exodus at the end of this. I do plan to have another committee hearing at the first of next week. The next is the Technical College System.
Thank you. I tell you, it's so refreshing.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman and committee members.
Hold on just a second, Commissioner Jackson. I realize this is not a comment on the Technical College System. There's just a lot of interest in the Regents, but if you guys would quickly make your way out or close the door and sit back down, one of the two, so we can respect the Technical College System's time as well.
I tell you, having a report.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much, brother. Loved you,
Expeditiously, please. Last one out gets a transfer. I'm going to have them lock the doors next time. We'll switch it around. Mr. Jackson, I apologize.
That's fine. That's fine.
I'm interested in what you have to say.
I know you are.
All right. Last one out, close the door. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Jackson.
We have a much more simplistic budget to discuss with you today, and a much smaller crowd. But we are very pleased to come and talk to you and answer questions that you may have about our 2013 budget. I would like to say that first, our relationship with the university system is outstanding at this point in time, and Chancellor Huckabee and his staff are working very closely with the technical college system now. If you look at our accomplishments on the handout that I provided you, we've taken a lead from our university system brothers and sisters in providing you a more simplistic look than the tracking document at our budget recommendations.
Like that.
You can see our accomplishments. I won't go over them, but clearly we've done some things at the technical college system that are important. They were tough endeavors. We think they will improve the higher education learning here in Georgia and help align us with the university system in K-12 that quarter to semester. You know of our mergers and the challenges that they have been, but the success I think they also have been. We've worked hard on our hope changes with students. As I mentioned earlier, the articulation and transfer agreements that we're working out with the university system for eventually 27 core courses that will students taking them at our college will transfer to university system colleges and private colleges, and that we now have 21 SACS and COC accredited colleges of our 25 with a goal of having them all done by 2015. You can see the numbers on the second page. Our enrollments, our Quick Start program, and our students served in adult education. That pretty well lines up with the 4 programs that we have in our budget. We have adult education, administration, economic development, and tech ed, technical education. You can see on the next page we've done one spreadsheet which I will go through column by column, which I think will help explain the budget recommendation and the changes between the 2012 base and the governor's 2013 recommendation. So you can see the base of a total of, in the first column, $313,270,000. The second column shows the back out of the one-time supplemental that we received last year to help us transition our truck driving program because of the loss of hope. It was a non-standard tuition of over $200 a credit hour based upon the actual cost of doing that very short program. That has been taken out of the 2013 budget, but it was also allowed to be taken out of our base. We have this adjusted base then of $308 million, which is what our 2% reduction was based upon. You can see the 2% reduction in the next column, $6.1 million. You can see that we did not take the 2% reduction internally from adult education and economic development, Quick Start. Those are such narrowly funded programs and so critically important programs, and because technical education is such a large funded program, it's easier to take the cuts there than it is in those 2 very critical programs, which are very narrowly funded anyway. So we took the 2% reduction of $152,000 in administration and $6 million in the technical education program, which is the dollars that are funded to the colleges for what the university system's comparable program is teaching. But that's what goes to our technical college. I have a column here which John Brown expressed very well in the university system. These are the benefit additions of health care, ERS, TRS additions that are made across all state agencies. We lump them into one column. These are generally comparable, and you'll see them in all the agencies. It's a $10 million add to take care of those additional costs that we have across our benefit packages and the increased costs there. Then you can see the important one for us, the formula increase in technical education of $16.8 million, and we're very grateful to the governor for recommending it, and we hope that you have the ability to continue that funding for us. And then the other changes are simply a number of shifts between adult education and administration and Quick Start. You see that $421,000. There were some administration positions which were paid in economic development, which were moving back into the administration program, and vice versa on the adult education. That really came about at OPB and with our concurrence in their ZBB review of our administration program. So those are just minor shifts. You can see then that we've gone from a base budget, an adjusted base budget of $308,700,000 to $329.5 million. This is the first time we've had an increase. The added formula increase is critically important to us. And Mr. Chairman, that's the simplistic review and overview of the changes, and I will be glad to answer any questions about any of those changes or any questions about our programs.
As always, Commissioner, I'm appreciative of your brevity, your clarity, and I like this new format as well. And I'm very pleased to hear it as well about the very collaborative relationship that technical colleges and the university system are developing. I think that's a testament to both of you gentlemen, Chancellor Huckabee and yourself, and I think the state will benefit tremendously from that. I think there are several questions. I've got a couple questions. I'll go to the committee members first, though. First is Chairman Yates.
Mr. Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
I'm interested in the Camden County project. I thought last year that was number one and didn't quite make it. I'm a little bit
it is still our number one project, but if you'd like for me to talk about it,
I don't have any interest in talking about that right now unless you just really, if Representative Chairman Yates has a question specific to it, I don't really want to go into the individual projects. If you have some specific questions about that project, I think it's more than relevant to ask, but I don't want to make a presentation on individual projects unless the others get the same opportunity, is what I'm saying.
What I did not do yet is go over the capital outlay. I'd be glad to do the general capital outlay.
I think that's a good idea. I think that'll benefit the members of the committee. That'll help Chairman Yates.
You can see on the next page on capital outlay, we took a very different approach based upon really some comments that the university system in some ways supported by some of their comments today. But you'll see our capital outlay request and the governor's recommendation on the last page. And the uniqueness of that request is that entire bundle is basically equipment and MR&R. There are no new projects on our request because our instructions were to keep our request for capital outlay to $60 million. That was our planning number. We determined and we believe that because we have over $100 million in MRR, repair and renovation projects on our list, we believe that it is prudent for us, and our state board supported this proposition in creating these priorities, that we need to fix what we have now before we build additional new facilities. We've got a lot of new facilities that are in the pipeline and being constructed now and are opening, and quite frankly, in the economic downturn and with no enrollment increase dollars for the last couple of years, we haven't had the money to staff the new buildings when they open. We really have to find that money because we don't get new staffing dollars when we open a new building. So it became imperative for us, we believe, to fix what we've got before we build any additional new buildings. I will tell you on this list at the top, the first two bundles, the first 15.2 are for our regular MR&R. $8 million was recommended, and obsolete equipment, $5 million was recommended. And you can see the others are to fund the $800,000 and the $1.4 million are to fund the equipment for the new buildings that we are opening during this fiscal year. The second group of $4.4 million, those are all roofing and HVAC projects. And we listed them this way so you would know where those projects are going, where that MR&R money is going, and what buildings and colleges they're going to. You can see the next bundle of $6.3 million are all roofing projects to fix roofs that are leaking. The West Georgia 1 project is to replace the HVAC system at the LaGrange campus, which is a converted building that we got several years ago. It was an old missile plant out there. It's a fabulous building, but it had a very sectioned HVAC system, well, not a sectioned HVAC system, and we have to run the whole system for the whole building, and the utility expense is ridiculous. We thought that project was critically important. And the other list at the bottom, of which we requested $24 million and the governor recommended $13.9 million, are additional general renovation projects that we think are critically important. The total recommendation for the whole package is $55.5 million. Now, you will notice on the next page, these are the priorities of the new projects that we have in line that are critically important. And Representative Yates, you see that our number one new priority is, in fact, Camden County. But you can see if funds were available, we gave this to the governor and to you, if funds were available for bond projects and new projects, these are our top priorities of projects, and we can provide you specific information if you would like on any of those projects. But it was our critically important belief that given the austerity budgets that we've operated under and how difficult it is to open new buildings, and we had a number in the pipeline already, that it was imperative that we use our bond dollars to fix what we've got right now rather than to go for new construction projects. And I, again, I'm ready to answer any questions about the general budget or the capital outlay.
All right. Representative Chairman, was that responsive to your request on Altamaha? Was that responsive to what you wanted to hear? Thank you, sir. Commissioner, I've got a couple questions. You mentioned in your original testimony to the committee, it was the old, it was 47.44 on the actual tracking sheet. There was a $3.9 million recommended cut for, I believe the way you characterize it, were institutions with less than 200 FTEs.
Yes, sir.
I guess I'm still trying to wrap my arms around it. I'm not sanguine about actually making a cut to the agency when you're actually not going to close those. I believe one of the news services ran a list of the closing, and it doesn't look like, or from what I can determine, that all those are going to be closed.
Yes, sir.
Can we get a list of those that are actually going to be closed? I don't want to cut you for something that you still have. And I know this is probably part of your 2%.
It's part of the 2%.
But it still doesn't ring well with me that we're going to cut a institution. I don't know how we balance that. So.
Well, it is 3.9 million of the 6.0 million to Tech Ed. That was part of the 2% reduction. We are continuing to do the analysis and the review. It appears to me right now we have identified 4 campuses that will close. There are several others of that original list of 18 that we may indeed close, shutter, if you will, until additional funds are available. But at this juncture, we will not reach the $3.9 million reduction that shuttering all of those 18 campuses would create.
I guess what I'd like you to do is provide this committee then with those that you're absolutely sure of and those dollar amounts.
Yes, sir.
Members of the committee, I want to get your guidance on that, but I don't want to take funds from institutions that are not being closed. We can probably find a different way to balance that. Just but be thinking about that if you would, please.
Without that 3.9 and shuttering reductions, we'll have to take those reductions in other places at the colleges to meet that $6 million reduction.
Well, we've made less than 2% reductions in other agencies across the board. I remember I've seen several budget I mean, already we took a couple from 2 to 1 in the in several other agencies. I'm just saying we might not have to go all. Let's see what that does to your 2%. I don't want to put you in a position that you have to go in and take another cut somewhere else.
As you know, we are a tough-minded agency, and we've taken a lot of challenges on, and if we had to, we'd take it on. But any help that can be provided would be appreciated.
Just that gift horse in the mouth is kind of what I'm talking.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any further questions of members of the committee? I have one other. I understand that there's some conversation with the Georgia Motor Trucking individuals and your agency and the governor's office with respect to that $4.5 million cut. We put that money in. I understand that left several of those people in the middle of that program that now can't finish it. Can you give us just a little bit of an update on what may be happening there?
I can give you an update. We basically are down in down in enrollment by about 39%, which is not good for the trucking industry, of course, and we've heard that loud and clear. In order to absorb some of that and make it easier, we lowered our number of hours, we reduced our faculty, and we lowered the tuition rate to $125 a credit hour. Almost $300 reduction in the credit hour tuition rate. In order to do that, we used the $4.5 million to supplement the colleges giving that program. Plus, we reduced faculty in a number of those truck driving programs. We could do that because we shortened the program by 2 weeks. That means less on-road driving time, not much less classroom time, but we had far exceed the general time in on-road driving with an instructor in the cab with the student. We don't believe it's reduced the safety and the importance and the quality of the program, but the industry likes our program and our graduates a lot, and we worked with them as we made those changes to the program. I will tell you this, that we've worked with the industry for some loan programs that individual companies will front some money for students when they come in to make that difference in that out-of-pocket. Then we are looking at perhaps a workforce development loan program. We've had some conversations about the development with student finance, and I think we'll be bringing a proposal forward on that this would meet. And then we've also worked with the Workforce Investment Board and Director Tricia Pridemore on the possibility of utilizing some Workforce Investment Act funds as on-the-job training that we can access for some of the students that would qualify. So we're working hard to close the gap to make sure the program doesn't go away. I think we're going to have, it won't go away, but we're truly going to have to make sure that we make it financially feasible, because it is an intense, I think now 9-week program. It was 11 weeks. We get people through the program and in jobs, almost 100% placement rate in an industry that desperately needs truck drivers. So it's a great program. We will, at the 39% reduced enrollment, we won't be producing all the industry needs. So we're going to have to come up with ways to do it. I think if we have a little more time on how we're going to come up with those additional strategies, we may be able to actually fix it so it works with
Very appreciative. That's a lot of good work on that. I'm appreciative. It looks like you're solving a problem. You have one question right now, and that's Representative Nix. Chairman Nix.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, Representative.
I really like this expanded articulation and transfer agreements. That's something, of course, House Bill 186 we wanted to push on, and I appreciate y'all working on that, and hope that continues to move forward. I think that means a lot for a lot of folks. As state funds have been cut back, where are we now in terms of fees that students are paying? What impact is that having? How much have fees gone up through this time? And what is it doing to our students?
Right. I can give you a list of the fees that we have. It's not a very extensive list of fees, and we've tried to hold them down critically because of the changes to Hope. And we saw the Hope changes with the fees and the books going away, so we've really tried to hold them down. We do create occasionally a new fee, but it has to be approved by me. We review them annually. I have a list of all of the fees. I don't recall on the top of my head what every college has most of the colleges have similar fees. A couple of the colleges have a fee that the other colleges don't have. I think they're reasonable, but I'll gladly share with you that total list of our fees and the history on the increases. But we have not had major increases, particularly during this time. We are very sensitive to what the students are having to pay out of pocket. Affordability is a real big issue for us. And so we try to hold the line on fees. We have, as you know, raised tuition over the past about 7 years, almost doubled, almost 100%. We think that's a reasonable thing. We still think it's a great buy on the semester system, $75 a credit hour. I don't think you can find a higher education system that's providing a tuition rate at that level. And on our fees, they are pretty limited. I don't think we have a fee that's over $25 or $30 on an individual fee anywhere, and I don't think we have over a total of 10 fees at any one individual college, and most of those are $5 or $10 or $12. But I'll get you a list of it. Be glad to share that with the committee.
Okay, Mr. Jackson, I very much appreciate your time. I'm going to cut it off here. We have a caucus meeting at 11. I want to try to give the members a chance to get across the street to that. Do you have any final comments you want to make? Or
I just want to thank the committee and the House for the great support you've given us over the years. We'll continue to do a great job for you.
Thank you very much. Anything further from members of the committee? Not, we're adjourned. Plan on another meeting probably next week. Thank you for hanging in there.
Cool, thanks. Check on the